Okay, so I think group home that's established specifically for people with PWS does have some advantages. Obviously, it's not the only way. So Interaction opened the first Australian Prader-Willi specific house in 1992. I've worked in the house and also oversee the program. Interaction also provides training, respite, clinical support, case management to people with Prader-Willi syndrome. It's not just about the food. Obviously with Prader-Willi syndrome, as we've heard with a lot of the presentations, there's anxiety, rigidity of thought, ritualistic behaviour, and difficulty in accepting change. So those things sort of work together to sort of bring out a lot of the outbursts and violence that we see, with that sort of just that level of anxiety and the difficulty with coping with change. Also skin picking and manipulation, and we see also psychosis. Oops. Oh, did I do that? Okay. So the thing that we've found with our program is really the importance of structure. And I know that this has already been emphasised in some of the other presentations, but people with Prader-Willi syndrome generally like routine, and generally they dislike unexpected changes. So that gives us something to work with. So we're creating a structure as a way of creating a healthy routine that obviously has that beneficial for increasing life expectancy and also reducing anxiety. And I think that was emphasised today, how those two things work in tandem. So we've found, and we've been running the program for quite a while, that people really thrive with that structure, and they're happiest when the structure's in place, because we have seen when different times in our program where the structure hasn't been in place and the wheels have come off and it's been, you know, high turnover, new staff, things like that. And we have seen the opposite, and we've seen things go out of hand, and the residents themselves have actually been not as happy when things go wrong. And it can be a real snowball effect. I think most people would have seen that at some time or another. If you've got someone with Prader-Willi syndrome, it can happen where the wheels just fall off, everything goes chaos, and it's just a whole combination. All the different things seem to go wrong at once. And sometimes, you know, when you can put a structure in place, you can avoid that, and for as long as possible. You know, it doesn't always stop everything, but it's really probably one of the best things that you can do. Just use down. Oh, yes. Okay, so the structures that I'm talking about is rules and routines that are negotiated in advance and equally applied. In a Prader-Willi specific house, you can equally apply the rules to everybody that's living there, which is very useful. It's good, we always negotiate, and there's also, in each routine's individual, because different people have different priorities and different things that they like to do, different orders. And it's really important that there's buy-in from everybody. It's a controlled environment, not only in terms of food, but also in terms of everything that comes in and out of the house and all the outings, because as everybody, well, as we know, you know, it can be not just a chocolate bar that comes in, but there's also other things, news items that come in, arguments that can happen over simple things, or just controversial issues coming into the house which cause all types of problems. So we really try and control the environment as much as possible, but in a nice way, obviously. We have set times for meals, and they're maintained. I mean, a lot of our people working in the house, so it's a bit like Ready, Steady, Cook, where it all comes out at the last minute. And there's skin checks and exercise every day. And all our outings are really planned and negotiated in advance, so we really go over everything. And that works with people with Prader-Willi syndrome, because the ones that we have, they really like to talk about what's happening tomorrow and in what order. And also that gives you the opportunity to find out if there is a problem or if there is an expectation that you're not aware of. That will come out in that discussion as to going into those details, because I think we need to think a little bit like the people with Prader-Willi syndrome sometimes think, which is in a lot of detail and in advance. So if we can do that as well, we can iron out some of these problems before they happen. So we're negotiating a busy routine, including lots of activities, lots of outings, lots of exercise. I mean, our guys get up, they have like a procedure for getting ready for work, which is quite natural for them because, as we know, people with Prader-Willi syndrome thrive on sort of doing the same thing every day and that structure. They go to work in the supported employment. They come home, generally they'll go on an outing, then there's dinner, then there's exercise, then there's supper, then there's time to talk. So it's really busy, there's always something to move on to. The staff members and the residents follow the routine. They try to avoid changing it without the approval of the manager, and there's certain things like food that just wouldn't be changed on the spot. It's always negotiated in advance. The menu choices are provided by the Prader-Willi syndrome clinic, but they're choices. And I suppose one of the problems that we sometimes have is getting them to choose something different occasionally. So we've had to introduce sort of more choice or more sort of for saying, well, you can't just have the same thing every day, because that was found not to be so good as well. And we provide a consistent response to behaviours. We try and always have the same thing and the same expectations so that when things do go wrong, everybody knows the drill and everybody knows what the consequences are. And I think it's also, I think Professor Einfeld mentioned that, you know, sometimes the same behaviour, it's really the outcome that everybody's concerned about. So it's really about minimising the outcome. You know, if something gets thrown but nobody gets hurt, or something gets thrown and somebody does get hurt, there's a big difference in the way, but not really in what's happened. So it's really about stopping anybody getting hurt or anything terrible happening. Okay, so some of the things that we use to support that structure are visual routine boards, caloric bargaining or calorie bargaining, whereby you'll see an upcoming event and you'll sort of try and negotiate some change in the menu leading up to that, something traded, which they actually like, because that signifies a week out that something's happening, that it's not such a bad thing. Reward systems, weekly meetings, but I mean just planning everything in advance, and also everybody working together. It's no use if you're clashing with the parents or with the day service all of the time. You really need buy-in, you really need to negotiate and work in everybody's points of view to get to that thing where everybody can agree on. You need to manage conversations all of the time. There's in a house where everybody has Prader-Willi syndrome, everyone's got strong views. It's good to know what the strong views are about and where those arguments are, and try and not to have those conversations so publicly in the house, but to say, okay, if you want to discuss that, we'll go to your room and discuss it. Something like religion, for example, if you've got opposing views or whatever. Reassurance, planned responses, diversion, private area to stop and listen to them. But there is this point of no return where, you know, you're not going to get any further, and that's where you really just back away and you wait until they calm down. And then you just return to the routine, and we don't really enforce we don't go back and look at what's happened, because that can be a real danger if you just go, now you know what you did wrong there, that will just start it all up again, because they may not agree with what you've just told them. And you'll relive the whole thing, which you don't want. So the disadvantages of the program, it is restrictive, it does limit unhealthy choices, so I suppose this type of model may not be for everybody in that way. It can be intense, and being routine based, I find that over the years our guys tend to have a little bit less tolerance to change than what some other people who live by themselves might be a bit more tolerant to different things happening, because we've built up this expectation that everything's going to be the way that we've planned it, so it does reduce the tolerance. And it would really be wrong to think that that we don't have ups and downs. I mean, we're always having different things creeping into the program. They become big problems before we realise, and then we have to manage it. But overall, it's been good. So we've found that the program does work well when everybody's working together. The rules are a framework. I think they do need to be reviewed regularly. We can't just stick to our guns and force people. We do have to sometimes give a little opportunity here and there to negotiate. The program does adapt over time. I mean, now our guys are in their late 40s. There's a lot more health needs coming into, a little bit less behavioural needs, but still a lot of the same strategies. And our clients are genuinely happy, and they do enjoy being in the house. So here's here's a couple of pictures, and thank you, everybody.